Hello, Mooncrafters. Welcome. This is Craft of Moon. This is the third part in the series on the Lunation Cycle. In the first video, we touched on the four principal points of the Lunation Cycle. The new moon, when the new moon is conjunct with the sun, the full moon when they stand in opposition, and the two quarter phases, the first quarter and the third quarter, where the moon appears half illuminated. We looked at how the moon's orbit around Earth intersects with Earth's own orbit around the sun, and how the Earth's rotation on its axis weaves into this cosmic dance. It's a geometry that reveals itself like a celestial clock, each component perfectly timed, everything interconnected. In the second video, we turned our eyes to the balance of shadow and shine, exploring how sometimes the moon displays more light, sometimes less, and how those polarities find equilibrium when we trace a line through the quarter phases. Out in the dark sky areas, you can almost feel that balance in the stillness, how the glow of the moon and the hush of its shadows both belong to a single unfolding mystery. In this third part of our journey, we're going to focus on the nature of waxing and waning. We locate this distinction by drawing an imaginary line through the lunar cycle from the new moon to the full moon. On one side of that line, the moon is waxing, gathering light into itself, while on the other side, it's waning, slowly releasing that light back into the darkness. It's a gentle rhythm. The moon never truly pauses at the extremes, even though we mark the new and full moons as key turning points. In truth, the moon is always on the move, always in a process of becoming or releasing. When the moon is waxing, she's in what I like to think of as a phase of approach. It's a story of accumulation, drawing in light day by day, curve by glowing curve. In a mystical sense, it's as though she's assembling fragments of the sun's radiance, building up toward the luminous fullness that dazzles us each month. This incremental gathering symbolizes the creative pulse in our own lives, the times when we too draw in knowledge, insights, experience, and store them like seeds in a field waiting to bloom. We can see it play out in everything from personal growth to larger life cycles as we move from darkness or unknowing to clarity and illumination. During the early part of the waxing cycle, when the moon is just a slender crescent, there's a feeling of fragility and hope reminiscent of the moment a seed first sprouts in spring. It's so delicate and new, so full of potential yet vulnerable, needing care and protection. We see this dynamic in all nascent forms of life. A puppy still small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, a seedling pushing through hard soil, a child learning to take its first steps. This is the moon's tender crescent time, the point where the light expands fast in percentage but remains soft in absolute brightness. As the moon moves beyond that first shy curve and approaches the first quarter, her illuminated face becomes stronger, more confident, like a teenager who's suddenly grown taller, forging onward but still in the midst of transformation. This progression continues into the gibbous phase, where the moon is robust, nearly full, and the rate of growth begins to slow. It's like reaching a plateau in adolescence. The major changes have happened, yet deeper refinements, strengthening, and self-awareness lie ahead. Finally, she arrives at the full moon, glowing in complete luminescence. Just as in our own lives, we experience these moments of peak insight or culmination. But even this fullness, so radiant, and complete doesn't last. The cycle continues, shifting seamlessly into the waning side. And just like that, you sense the gentle exhale, the letting go of the light. Sometimes in astrology and myth, we imagine the moon as distinctly feminine. Her curves, her phases, her generative warmth. Yet in other cultural lenses, the moon holds both masculine and feminine, interweaving polarity within a single body. Some traditions see the sun as feminine and the moon as masculine. Others ascribe them both or neither. It's a reminder that these celestial archetypes shift and flow, refusing to be pinned down to only one interpretation. They mirror us humans in that we contain a host of qualities within a single soul. Still, no matter which symbolic lens we choose, the theme remains. The waxing half of the moon's cycle resonates with growth, expansion, creativity. It's like a conversation with potential. What will become of this seed? How do we nurture its first leaves? And then, at the quarter, like a young person hitting adolescence, there's this tension between further expansion and the dawning recognition of boundaries. Growth continues, but at a gentler pace, shaping the refining rather than exploding outwards. In the cosmic tapestry of symbolic cycles, we also connect these lunar phases with broader timelines, like in secondary progressions, where a single day of the moon's motion can signify an entire year in a person's life. The moon's cycle maps onto these larger arcs, reflecting how we too wax and wane in understanding and experience, shedding old skins and cultivating new growth as we go. All of this, to me, mirrors the quiet magic I have felt when deep in the desert. Often, though the moon has slipped from sight, her essence lingered, and a delicate balsamic echo whispered, transformation. In Hermetic thought, that balsamic phase marks a time of dissolution, the breakdown of what once was so that something new can eventually take root. It's that sacred hush before the next beginning, much like the soil resting in winter, cradling the seed. And so, we come to the waning side of the moon, where the slow, steady release of light occurs. We'll talk more about that in the next segment, but how the moon's gentle decline parallels our own processes of letting go, of allowing what must pass to pass, of clearing space for fresh starts, because this cycle, this continual interplay of waxing and waning, is the very heartbeat of lunar magic. It reminds us that there is a time to gather and a time to yield, a time to glow and a time to recede, each phase offering its own invitation to wonder and grow. This series on lunar cycles invites us to step into that rhythm, to see the moon not as a static fixture in the night, but as a dynamic force, shaping the world and our lives. Across these sessions, we're exploring the moon's phases, its light and shadow, and the archetypal stories it carries. We'll trace its movements and meanings from the fragile crescent to the luminous full, and finally the quiet grace of its waning curve. But before we look into these cycles, it's worth stepping back to look at the greater context, to understand the astronomical dance that makes it all possible. The moon is Earth's closest neighbor in space, orbiting at an average distance of about 238,855 miles. While this might seem vast, in astronomical terms, it's remarkably close. Close enough to influence the tides and hold sway over the rhythms of life on Earth. Its orbit is not a perfect circle, but an ellipse, which means that the moon sometimes comes closer to Earth, a point called perigee, and sometimes drifts further away, apogee. This slight variance gives us the occasional phenomenon of the supermoon, when the moon appears larger and brighter in the sky. The moon's orbit is also tilted about 5 degrees relative to the plane of Earth's orbit around the sun. This tilt is subtle but significant, as it explains why we don't have solar and lunar eclipses every month. Instead, eclipses occur only when the sun, Earth, and moon align perfectly, a reminder of the precise choreography of the cosmos. As the moon orbits the Earth, it takes about 27.3 days to complete a full revolution, a period known as the sidereal month. However, because Earth is also moving around the sun, it takes a bit longer, 29.5 days, for the moon to return to the same phase relative to the sun. This is a cycle we observe as the lunar phases. From the new moon to the full moon, back again. It's a cycle of light and shadow, of waxing and waning, and it's guided humans for millennia. While the moon traces its path around the Earth, our planet is on a journey of its own. A vast orbit around the sun that defines our year. Earth's orbit is also elliptical, with an average distance of about 93 point some odd million miles. This journey takes around 365.25 days to complete. A rhythm that shapes the changing seasons and the rhythm of life. Like the moon's orbit, Earth's path is tilted, roughly 23.5 degrees, or more precisely, closer to 23.4392911, and on that number goes. It's an irrational number and doesn't have an end. This tilt is what gives our seasons. As Earth orbits the sun, this tilt causes different parts of the planet to receive varying amounts of sunlight at different times of the year. When the northern hemisphere is tilted toward the sun, it's summer there, while the southern hemisphere experiences winter, and vice versa. This tilt and orbit also influence how we perceive the moon. Depending on the time of year, the angle of the moon's path across the sky changes slightly, affecting where and how it appears to rise and set. It's one of those small details that might go unnoticed until you start paying attention. But once you see it, it's hard not to marvel at the interconnectedness of it all. And then there's the Earth's rotation, a daily spin that creates the rhythm of day and night. Earth rotates once roughly every 24 hours, spinning eastward at a speed of around 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. It's a movement so constant and smooth, we hardly notice it, yet it defines the way we experience time. This rotation is also why the moon seems to rise and set. As Earth spins, we move in and out of the moon's view, creating the illusion that the moon is moving across the sky. In reality, the moon's own motion is much slower. It rises about 50 minutes later each day because of its orbit around Earth. Earth's axial tilt, combined with its rotation and orbit, creates the conditions for the moon's phases. As the moon orbits Earth, sunlight illuminates half of its surface at all times. From our vantage point, the angle between the sun, Earth, and moon determines how much of that illuminated half we can see. This is why the moon appears to change shape throughout the month, transitioning from the dark new moon to the bright full moon and back again. Together, these movements, Earth's orbit around the sun, its axial rotation, and the moon's orbit around the Earth create the intricate dance that defines our experience of the lunar cycle. They are the mechanics behind the magic of the unseen gears of the celestial clock that has been ticking for billions of years. But these movements are more than just facts or figures. They are rhythms that shape our lives. The tides rise and fall with the moon. The seasons shift with the Earth's orbit, and the changing light of the lunar phases influences everything from ancient planting calendars to modern moods. Even our sense of time, the days, months, and years, is all tied to these cycles. They are the heartbeat of the natural world, connecting us to something larger than ourselves. When we look at the moon, we're seeing not just a celestial body, but a participant in this great dance. Its phases reflect our own cycles of growth and rest, of gathering and letting go. The waxing crescent mirrors the hope of new beginnings. The full moon shines with the light of culmination, and the waning crescent speaks to the wisdom of release. This series is an invitation to step into that rhythm, to see the moon as both a guide and a mirror. It's about understanding the astronomical foundations of the lunar cycle, yes, but also about embracing its symbolic and spiritual dimensions. Because when we connect with the moon's rhythm, we're also connecting with the rhythm of Earth, the sun, and ultimately ourselves. As we begin this journey, let's take a moment to reflect on the extraordinary interconnectedness of it all. The moon's orbit around Earth, Earth's orbit around the sun, and the daily rotation of our planet are not separate movements, but parts of a single, seamless dance. It's a dance that's been unfolding for billions of years, shaping not just how the sky, but the very fabric of life on Earth. And as we move forward, exploring the moon's phases and their meanings, let's carry with us a sense of wonder for the intricate choreography that makes it all possible. The moon may seem small against the vastness of the cosmos, but its presence is a reminder of the beauty in cycles, the power of rhythm, and the magic of being part of something so much larger than ourselves. The moon, our celestial companion, dances throughout its phases with a rhythm as ancient as time itself. From the soft glow of the crescent to the radiant fullness of the full moon and back to the quiet embrace of shadow, its light is never static. It waxes, gathering strength, and then wanes, retreating gracefully. This interplay of light and shadow, the waxing and waning phases, is the heartbeat of the lunar cycle. These phases, divided by the line from the new moon to the full moon, carry symbolic meaning, speaking to the cycles of growth, creation, refinement, and release that echo through nature and our own lives. The waxing phase begins at the new moon, a moment of darkness when the moon is aligned with the sun. From this starting point, the moon slowly emerges, growing in light, night by night. It's as if the moon is drawing fragments of the sun's brilliance into itself, assembling its glow piece by piece. This journey continues until the full moon, when the moon stands fully illuminated, its light reflecting back at us in all its glory. In this phase, the moon is increasing in visibility, its face expanding like a canvas, slowly filling with light. This progression is more than just a celestial phenomenon, it's a powerful symbol for growth and creation. The waxing phase mirrors the early stages of any cycle, the time of beginnings when ideas are born, projects are initiated, and the seeds of intention take root. The early days of the waxing crescent carry a sense of fragility and potential, like a sapling breaking through the soil. The moon's light is delicate, but brimming with promise. This is a time for setting intentions, for nurturing the first sparks of inspiration. It's a phase that encourages action, asking us to take those first tentative steps towards our goals. As the moon moves into its first quarter and beyond, its light grows stronger, more assured. The waxing gibbous phase marks a period of refinement when the initial rush of growth begins to take shape. It's a time to build, to strengthen, to expand. The waxing moon reminds us that growth is not just about starting, but about sustaining, about gathering the resources and energy needed to reach fruition. The waxing moon is a time of creation, of pulling light into oneself. It's a phase of potential becoming reality, of ideas taking form. This phase speaks to the energy of beginnings, the excitement of starting something new, the hope of what might be. It's the upward climb, the push towards fullness, the gathering of strength. In our lives, the waxing phase can represent moments of spiritual or personal growth. It's the phase when we set goals, learn new skills, and expand our horizons. It's a time to dream, but also to act, to take tangible steps towards our visions. The waxing moon teaches us that creation is an active process, one that requires both imagination and effort. As the full moon reaches its peak, the cycle begins to turn. The waning phase marks the moon's slow retreat from light, its gradual return to shadow. Night by night, the illuminated portion of the moon's face shrinks until it becomes just a sliver of light, what we call the balsamic crescent, before disappearing entirely into the new moon. If the waxing phase is about building, the waning phase is about releasing. It's a time to let go of what has been gathered, to refine what remains, and to prepare for the next cycle. This is simultaneously a surrender and an offering. The waning moon carries a quieter energy, one of reflection and submission. It reminds us that not everything is meant to last, that growth is balanced by rest, and that endings are necessary for new beginnings. The waning gibbous phase is a time for sharing and disseminating. It's the phase where the fruits of growth are distributed, where we take stock of what has been accomplished and begin the process of release. By the time the moon reaches the third quarter, light and shadow are once again in balance. This phase is a moment of clarity, a time to evaluate what remains and decide what to carry forward. The final days of the waning crescent bring a sense of closure. The moon's light fades almost entirely, leaving just the faintest whisper of illumination. It's a phase of introspection, a time to rest and prepare for renewal. It's a phase that reminds us of the beauty in endings, of the wisdom in letting go. The waning moon is a metaphor for refinement and dissolution. It speaks to the cycles of nature, the falling of leaves in autumn, the quiet dormancy of winter. It's a phase that encourages reflection, asking us to look back on what has been, offer what we have learned or created, and to release what no longer serves. The waning moon teaches us that letting go is not an act of loss, but of transformation. In our own lives, the waning phase can represent moments of transition or closure. It's a time to process, to heal, to make peace with what has passed. It's the phase where we clear space for the next cycle, trusting that new beginnings are already on the horizon. The balance between waxing and waning phases are not opposites, but complements, two halves of a greater whole. Together they create the rhythm of the lunar cycle, a rhythm of light and shadow, growth and rest, creation and release. Each phase carries its own energy, its own lessons, and its own beauty. The waxing moon invites us to act, to build, to expand. It's a phase of potential, a celebration of what is to come. The waning moon, in contrast, invites us to reflect, to release, to rest. It's a phase of wisdom, a reminder that endings are as vital as beginnings. This balance is at the heart of the lunar cycle. It's a rhythm that speaks to the cycles of nature, the flow of tides, and the rhythm of our own lives. The waning and waxing of the moon mirror the dualities we navigate every day. The push and pull between action and rest, between holding on and letting go. As we consider the waxing and waning phases, we're reminded of the beauty in cycles. The moon's light grows and fades, but it never disappears. It moves seamlessly from one phase to the next, carrying the rhythm of the cosmos in its journey. This cycle of light and shadow is not just a phenomenon to observe, it's a rhythm to embrace, a reminder of the constant motion of life. Whether we are gathering light or letting it go, whether we are creating or refining, the moon teaches us to honor each phase for what it is: growth and release, light and shadow. They are all part of the same cycle, the same story, the same dance. And in that dance, we find not just the moon's rhythm, but our own. The moon's phases, from its first faint sliver of light to its full brilliance and eventual retreat into shadow, hold a mirror to our own journeys. In its waxing phase, as the moon gathers light, it symbolizes growth, potential, and the unfolding of life's possibilities. This stage of the lunar cycle is not merely an astronomical event, but a metaphor for personal and spiritual development, echoing the rhythms of nature and the cycles of human life and the patterns of creation. As the moon moves from darkness to fullness, it mirrors the process of gathering energy, strength, and insight. Its waxing light represents the growth we experience when we take the first steps towards a new goal, a new understanding, or a new phase of life. This is the time of expansion, when the seeds of potential planted during the new moon begin to take sprout and take form. The light of the waxing moon is not just about illumination. It's about the act of collecting, of drawing energy inward and upward. Symbolically, this phase invites us to embrace curiosity, set intentions, and take the deliberate action. It's a time for learning, exploring, and creating, much like the early stages of any endeavor, when excitement and possibility dominate. In spiritual terms, the waxing moon reflects the soul's desire to grow. It's the period of acquiring knowledge, cultivating skills, and stepping into a greater version of oneself. This phase encourages us to dream boldly and act with purpose, gathering the fragments of potential into something whole. In the early days of the waxing phase, the moon appears as a delicate crescent, its light a thin curve against the darkness. This phase carries a sense of fragility reminiscent of the first tender shoots of spring, or the moment a newborn opens its eyes to the world. It's a stage of beginnings, full of promise, but requiring care and protection. The crescent moon symbolizes the vulnerability of new growth. It's the time when ideas are just beginning to take shape, when goals are still nascent, and when the foundation of future success is being laid. This phase is not without its challenges. Like a sapling weathering its first storms, early growth can feel uncertain, tentative, and even precarious. Yet it is also a phase of potential, brimming with the energy of what could be. Metaphorically, the crescent moon is like the first steps of a child, the opening lines of a story, or the initial strokes on a blank canvas. It is a call to nurture the fragile beginnings of something new, to protect and support the early stages of growth so they can flourish. As the moon grows beyond its crescent phase, its light becomes fuller, more robust. By the time it reaches the gibbous phase, it is nearly complete, its face glowing with confidence. This stage represents maturation, a time when the rapid growth of the early phase slows, giving way to refinement and deepening. The gibbous moon reflects the process of fine-tuning, of building strength and resilience. It's the phase when the initial rush of creation begins to settle, allowing for focus and clarity. This is a time to polish what has been started, to shape it into its fullest potential. It's not just about expansion, but about preparation, getting ready for the full moon's peak. In human terms, the gibbous moon is like adolescence or young adulthood, a time of growing that is no longer explosive, but steady and deliberate. It's the stage when we refine our talents, solidify our knowledge, and prepare to step into our full power. It creates a sense of anticipation, as though the moon itself is holding its breath, waiting for the moment of culmination. The waxing moon finds its counterparts in the natural world. It's the budding flower, the sprouting seed, the growing tree. In spring, we see the earth mirror its phase of the moon as life begins to reawaken after the stillness of winter. The world hums with the energy of creation, and each day brings visible signs of growth. In agricultural traditions, the waxing moon has long been associated with planting and cultivating. Farmers have looked to the growing light as a signal to sow seeds, trusting that the moon's upward pull will encourage healthy growth. This connection between the waxing moon and planting cycles reinforces its symbolic ties to beginnings and expansion. The waxing moon mirrors the early stages of human life. Its crescent phase aligns with infancy and childhood, a time of rapid growth, curiosity, and discovery. Much like the young moon, children gather knowledge and experiences at an astonishing rate, laying the groundwork for their future selves. As the moon moves into its gibbous phase, it reflects adolescence and young adulthood. This is a time when growth begins to stabilize, but the focus shifts to refinement and preparation. The energy of this phase is one of anticipation, of preparing for the fullness of life's potential. Across cultures, the waxing moon has been celebrated as a symbol of creation and vitality. In many traditions, rituals performed during the waxing phase are designed to bring things into being, whether it's setting intentions, starting new projects, or invoking abundance. The growing light is seen as a time for action, for harnessing energy, and for building momentum. In mythology, the waxing moon is often associated with youthful, generative archetypes. The Greek goddess Artemis, for example, embodies the crescent moon's energy, dynamic, independent, and full of potential. Similarly, the waxing moon is linked to the maiden phase of the triple goddess archetype, representing new beginnings, fertility, and the excitement of what lies ahead. The waxing moon is a time of energy, momentum, and possibility. It speaks to the excitement of growth, the hope of what can be achieved, and the beauty of creation in its early stages. Its light gathers strength with each passing night, reminding us that growth is not instantaneous, but a process, one that requires care, intention, and perseverance. As we look to the waxing moon, we see more than just a celestial phase. We see ourselves reflected in its journey. The light it gathers is the light we seek in our own lives, the illumination of knowledge, the glow of inspiration, the radiance of potential becoming reality. The waxing moon teaches us to embrace the process of growth, to nurture our own beginnings, and to trust in the unfolding of life's cycles. The waxing moon's steady accumulation of light is a powerful symbol of the process of becoming. In meditative traditions that emphasize the generation of energy and intention, this phase aligns with the expansion of awareness, the building of focus, and the deliberate cultivation of what we wish to manifest. It's not about rushing to fullness, but about the steady, intentional gathering of clarity and strength. This phase of the moon embodies Shakti, the creative force that animates the universe. Just as the moon gathers the sun's light night by night, so too does this creative energy weave potential into form. The waxing moon teaches us that growth is not an explosion, but an unfolding, a process that builds with each small, deliberate step forward towards fullness. The waxing moon reminds us that growth is rarely instantaneous. It's a gradual process that requires patience, persistence, and faith in the unfolding. Each phase of the waxing moon carries its own lesson. The crescent phase carries the lesson of time of tender beginnings, when the first glimmers of light emerge. This phase is about nurturing fragile intentions, protecting them as they take root. The first quarter is a moment of tension and effort when challenges may arise, but progress is made through action and resilience. The gibbous phase is a time of refinement and preparation as the light becomes nearly full and the culmination of the cycle is within reach. This rhythm mirrors the natural cycles of life. Growth requires care and intention, and the waxing moon teaches us to honor each stage of the process, trusting that the light will come in its time. The waxing moon's journey isn't just about gathering light, it's about integrating that light into the fabric of our lives. In meditative practices, this means embodying the energy of growth and creation in the way we think, act, and move through the world. The waxing moon invites us to translate intention into action. It's a time to take deliberate steps towards our goals, whether through creative endeavors, personal growth, or acts of kindness and service. Each action becomes a reflection of the light we are cultivating, a step in the journey of becoming. The waxing moon also teaches us to trust in the rhythm of growth. Its light grows steadily, night by night, reminding us that progress is often subtle, even imperceptible. This trust is central to meditative practices where patience and presence allow transformation to unfold naturally. The waxing moon is more than a celestial phase. It's a teacher, a guide to the rhythms of creation and growth. Its growing light reflects the essence of meditative practices that emphasize deliberate cultivation and focus. It reminds us that growth is a sacred process, one that requires effort, intention, and trust. As we align with the waxing moon's energy, we step into its flow, becoming active participants in the cycles of light and shadow, creation and transformation. Each moment becomes an opportunity to gather light, to nurture potential, and to honor the infinite rhythm of becoming. Just as the moon grows towards fullness, so too do we with care, intention, and the quiet power of trust. The moon's cycle, with its rhythmic interplay of light and shadow, serves as more than a celestial phenomenon. It offers a profound mirror to the challenges and triumphs of our human journeys. Each phase, with its distinct energy and symbolism, reveals a cyclical process of creation, growth, refinement, and release, a universal rhythm that guides both nature and our inner lives. As the moon waxes and wanes, it mirrors complexities of personal evolution, where light represents aspiration and clarity, while shadow reflects the tension and mystery that drive transformation. This journey is marked by moments of expansion, tension, and renewal, teaching us that growth is not linear, but a spiral of becoming and dissolving. The waxing moon, from the new moon to the full moon, is the story of becoming. Its light builds night by night, carrying us through the phases of intention, effort, refinement, and culmination. This progression mirrors the way we bring intentions and dreams into reality, a process that begins in the unseen and moves steadily towards illumination. The new moon, from 0 to 45 degrees, is the seeds of potential. The new moon begins the cycle in darkness. It's the moment of initiation, where intentions are set, dreams are planted, and the first stirrings of creation take root. Symbolically, this phase represents pure potential, a space of fertile mystery where the formless begin to take shape. Here we are reminded that all growth starts in the unseen, in the quiet trust of beginnings, like a seed beneath the soil. The intentions of the new moon require care and patience to germinate. It is a time to align with our vision and trust in the cycles of becoming, even when the outcomes remain hidden. From 45 degrees to 90 degrees, approximately, is the crescent moon at around 45 degrees, and then at 90 becomes the quarter moon. And this represents the struggle and growth. As the crescent moon emerges, its delicate arc of light symbolizes the first steps of growth. This is the phase of overcoming inertia and nurturing the fragile beginnings of what was initiated during the new moon. It's a time of hope in action where early efforts face the challenges taking shape. This phase reflects the delicate balance between fragility and resilience, like a sapling pushing through hard soil. Our intentions require courage and care to thrive. The crescent moon reminds us that growth, while full of promise, demands persistence and trust in the process. At the first quarter, we have the symbolism of crisis in action. And that starts at 90 degrees when we have the quarter in its completion, and then moves on to 135 degrees. The first quarter moon, with its balance of light and shadow, sparks a crisis in action. It's a moment of tension where intentions meet real-world obstacles. This phase teaches us that growth is not passive. It demands action, resilience, and the willingness to adapt. This is the phase where the initial spark of inspiration is tested. Symbolically, it parallels adolescence, a time of rapid growth and self-discovery marked by the friction between light, aspiration, and shadow, resistance. The first quarter moon challenges us to confront obstacles and refine our goals, reminding us that tension is a necessary force for transformation. The gibbous moon from 135 degrees to 180 degrees is the refinement and dedication. As the moon moves toward fullness, its light grows slower but steadier, signaling a shift from rapid expansion to thoughtful refinement. The gibbous phase is a time of preparation and honing, where the focus turns to perfecting what has been built. This phase mirrors the transition from adolescence to young adulthood, where the energy of growth begins to stabilize and the focus shifts towards deeper alignment. The gibbous moon reminds us that progress requires both effort and patience, encouraging us to refine our intentions and trust in the approaching culmination. At the peak of the cycle, the full moon, at 180 degrees, shines its radiant fullness. It is a moment of fulfillment, where the intentions set at the new moon reach their culmination. This phase represents illumination and duality, a time to celebrate what has been achieved while confronting the truths that light reveals. The full moon teaches us the power of reflection. It offers clarity, allowing us to see both our successes and our shortcomings. It is a time of celebration, but also accountability, where the light illuminates the balance of light and shadow within our journey. The full moon reminds us that the true fulfillment lies not in perfection, but in understanding, integration, and the ability to hold both joy and challenge. As the moon begins to wane, her light diminishes and the energy of the cycle shifts out from outward expansion to inward reflection. The waning phases guide us through the process of sharing, reassessment, release, and surrender, reminding us that endings are as vital as beginnings. The disseminating moon, from about 225 degrees to 270 degrees, represents sharing and contribution. The disseminating moon is a phase of giving back, where the insights and achievements of the full moon are shared with the collective. It emphasizes the responsibility of knowledge, that growth is not just personal, but communal. This phase teaches the importance of offering what we have learned to others, contributing to the greater whole, and aligning with the cycles of generosity and reciprocity. The disseminating moon reminds us that our personal growth becomes most meaningful when it serves a larger purpose. The last quarter moon, from about 270 degrees to 315 degrees, represents a crisis in consciousness. The last quarter moon marks a crisis in consciousness where we are called to release and reassess. As the light continues to retreat, this phase invites us to confront attachments to outgrown patterns and structures. This phase reflects the wisdom of letting go. It teaches us that transformation often requires surrender, the ability to release what no longer serves, and the courage to embrace the unknown. The last quarter moon reminds us that endings are an essential part of the cycle, clearing space for new beginnings. The balsamic moon, from about 315 degrees to 360 degrees, the closing of the cycle, represents release and renewal. In the final phases of the cycle, the balsamic moon embodies rest and surrender. Its fading light signals closure and introspection, a time to integrate the lessons of the journey and prepare for the fertile darkness of the new moon. This phase teaches us the importance of honoring endings, trusting in the cycles of renewal, and embracing the quiet wisdom of stillness. The balsamic moon reminds us that every ending carries the seed of a new beginning, encouraging us to let go with grace and prepare for the next cycle of creation. The waning moon carries with it an unmistakable shift, a quiet turning from accumulation to offering. As her light softens, she moves with purpose through the sky, redistributing the energy she has gathered during her waxing phase. This is not simply a retreat into shadow. It is an act of weaving, a deliberate and graceful return to the gifts she has collected. The waning moon teaches us that endings are not about loss, but about sharing, about offering back to the cosmos and the world what we have nurtured and refined. The moon's journey through her waxing phases is one of gathering, passing through the signs, houses, and aspects of the zodiac. She absorbs light and energy of the planets she meets. She takes from Jupiter's expansiveness, from Venus's harmony, and from Mars's drive, and carries these threads of influence with her, weaving them into the fullness of the lunar cycle. By the time she reaches her apex at the full moon, she is radiant with possibility, her light reflecting the culmination of her journey thus far. But the story does not end at fullness. From this peak, the moon begins her gentle descent, and with it, her role shifts. No longer the collector, she becomes the giver. Each thread she gathered in her waxing phases is now carefully offered back to the signs, planets, and houses she touches as she wanes. This is the work of integration and balance, where the energies she has held are returned to the cosmos, not as they were, but transformed through her movement and light. The waning moon's path is one of reciprocity. Just as she borrowed light to shine brightly, she now shares that light, giving back what was never hers to keep. When she meets Saturn, she offers Jupiter's optimism, balancing growth with structure. As she passes through Cancer, she may return the assertive energy of Aries, creating harmony between initiation and nurture. In this way, the waning moon becomes a bridge, a weaver of threads that connects the celestial patterns to the rhythms of life on Earth. This cycle of offering is not only celestial, but deeply human. The waning moon invites us to consider what we have gathered during our own waxing phases, insights, lessons, and achievements, and to ask how we might share them. What wisdom have we gained that we can nourish others? What light have we absorbed that is now ready to be released? The moon teaches us that what we hold is never solely ours. It's meant to flow back into the world, enriching the lives and spaces we touch. Her offering is deliberate, not hurried. The waning moon does not scatter her light carelessly. She weaves it into the tapestry of existence with care and intention. This is a reminder that our own contributions, no matter how small they may seem, are part of a greater whole, a kind world, a shared story, a moment of grace. Each thread matters. Each offering carries meaning. The waning moon's weaving is not confined to light. She also carries the shadow of her journey, the challenges, doubts, and tensions of her waxing phases. These too are part of her offering, for the shadow is not empty but full of wisdom. In her waning light, she reminds us that what we release is not discarded but transformed. The struggles we have faced become lessons for others. The burdens we have carried become lighter when shared. As her light fades towards the crescent, the moon moves into her most introspective phase. This is not a withdrawal, but a gathering of strength for the final act of offering. In her crescent form, she carries the quiet wisdom of endings, the stillness that prepares the way for renewal. It is here, in the softening shadow, that she reminds us of the beauty of release, not as an absence, but as a clearing, a fertile space for the next cycle to begin. The waning moon invites us to see endings not as failures or losses, but as necessary acts of balance. What we release, we transform. What we replenish. Her retreat into shadow is an act of grace, a way of making space for the potential that stirs unseen in the darkness. Her journey teaches us that life is not simply about gathering and holding, but about weaving and offering. The light we carry is meant to flow outward, to touch and illuminate others. The lessons we learn are not meant to stay hidden, but to become part of the greater rhythm of life. The waning moon reminds us that in giving we complete the cycle. In letting go, we prepare for the next beginning. As she nears the new moon, the moon offers her final gift, the gift of emptiness. This is not a void, but a canvas, a space for new dreams, her intentions, and new light. Her journey ends not in silence, but in potential, ready to begin again. And the cycle turns as she teaches us once more to hold is to release, and to give is to grow. Throughout the moon's cycle, the interplay of light and shadow mirrors the dualities of our own lives. Light represents clarity, aspiration, and growth, while shadow reflects tension, resistance, and the mysteries that drive transformation. Together they create the dynamic balance that propels us forward. In the waxing phases, the moon teaches us to embrace the energy of becoming, to push through resistance, refine our intentions, and trust in the process of growth. In the waning phases, it reminds us to release, reassess, and surrender, finding wisdom in endings and preparation for renewal. The moon's journey is a metaphor of our own, a rhythm of creation, growth, refinement, and release. It teaches us that life is not linear but a series of cycles, each offering its own wisdom and opportunities for transformation. Whether we are navigating the challenges of the first quarter, the refinement of the gibbous phase, or the release of the balsamic moon, we are always moving within this ancient rhythm of light and shadow, becoming and dissolving. The moon's phases remind us that growth is a dance, a spiral of persistence and change, and a testament to the beauty of life's continual unfolding. The moon and the sun, the two great luminaries of the sky, have captivated humanity for millennia. They've been woven into myths, rituals, and stories across cultures, their symbolism reflecting the mysteries of existence. Yet the way these celestial bodies are perceived varies widely, especially in how they are linked to concepts of gender, polarity, and archetypal energies. The moon, in particular, embodies a fascinating duality, sometimes feminine, sometimes masculine, always holding a mirror to the cultures and archetypes that interpret its light and shadow. In many Western traditions, the moon is closely associated with femininity. Its waxing and waning phases mirror the cycles of creation, growth, and renewal, often attributed to feminine energy. The moon is seen as nurturing, intuitive, and reflective, aligning with archetypal qualities of the mother or the maiden. The sun, by contrast, is often viewed as a masculine force, radiant, active, and consistent in its light, embodying qualities of vitality, strength, and outward expression. However, this framework is not universal. In many Eastern and indigenous traditions, the symbolism is reversed. For example, in Japanese and Korean mythology, the sun is represented as a feminine figure, Amaterasu, the sun goddess. In Japan's Shinto belief system, and Haimosu, the sun lord, in Korean myth. The moon in these traditions is more commonly associated with masculinity, reflecting qualities like adaptability, skill, and the ability to hold both light and balance in shadow. These cultural representations reveal a deeper truth. The moon and the sun are not bound to one gender or role. Instead, they represent archetypal energies that transcend human constructs of masculinity and femininity. They embody duality and unity, the interplay of opposites that form the foundation of existence. The moon's duality is one of its most compelling features. It is both illuminated and dark, revealing and concealing. This interplay between light and shadow makes it a powerful symbol of polarity, the coexistence of opposing forces. In some traditions, the moon's light is associated with masculine qualities, such as clarity, action, and the reflective power of the mind. Its shadow, by contrast, is seen as feminine, representing mystery, intuition, and the depths of emotion. In other cultural frameworks, this polarity is reversed. The moon's light is viewed as nurturing and feminine, while its shadow holds a masculine energy of stillness and rest. These interpretations highlight the fluidity of the moon's symbolism. It is not confined to one perspective, but instead invites us to explore the balance between opposites, the way light and shadow are not enemies but partners in the same dance. The sun, too, holds a dual role. While it is often seen as a symbol of constancy and outward energy, it can also represent integration and unity. In some indigenous traditions, the sun embodies the balance of masculine and feminine energies, a harmonizing force that brings together dualities into a greater whole. This perspective reminds us that the sun and moon are not merely opposites, but complements, each reflecting and enhancing the other. The moon and sun, with their interplay of light and shadow, form a powerful archetypal pair. Together, they represent the cycles of creation, growth, and balance that underpin all life. Their dynamic is not about dominance or opposition, but about collaboration, each taking turns to guide and nurture the rhythms of the natural world. The moon's phases, waxing, full, and waning, align closely with the archetypal themes of creation and transformation. In its waxing phase, the moon symbolizes growth and potential, a time of gathering energy and setting intentions. The full moon, with its radiant light, represents culmination and fulfillment, a moment of peak energy and clarity. As the moon wanes, it becomes a symbol of release, introspection, and preparation for renewal. These phases mirror the archetypal life cycles found in myth and nature. The waxing moon aligns with the maiden figure of youth, potential, and new beginnings. The full moon corresponds to the mother, representing abundance, creativity, and nurturance. The waning moon embodies the crone, a wise figure who carries the wisdom of endings and the promise of transformation. The sun, steady and unchanging in its light, serves as a counterbalance to the moon's shifting phases. It represents the constancy of life, the energy that sustains growth and vitality. In its archetypal role, the sun is often linked to the hero's journey, a symbol of outward action, purpose, and the quest for meaning. Its daily rise and fall mirror the cycles of effort and rest. a reminder of the balance between striving and surrender. In some traditions, the sun is also seen as the great integrator, harmonizing the dualities of existence. It brings together the energies of light and shadow, action and reflection, masculine and feminine, creating a unified whole. This archetype speaks to the interconnectedness of all things, the way opposites are not separate, but intertwined. The interplay of masculine and feminine energies in the moon and sun is reflected in the cultural practices around the world. Many traditions honor these celestial bodies as sacred symbols, using their rhythms to guide rituals, ceremonies, and daily life. In Native American traditions, the moon is often seen as a grandmother figure, a wise and nurturing presence that governs the cycles of nature. The sun, by contrast, is a father figure providing light, warmth, and the energy needed for life. In Hindu cosmology, the moon, or Chandra, is a deity associated with emotions, intuition, and the mind, while the sun, Surya, represents knowledge, truth, and the soul. Together they form a complementary pair, balancing the inner and outer aspects of existence. In Celtic traditions, the moon and sun are celebrated as dual aspects of the divine, with the moon linked to the goddess and the sun to the god. Their interplay is seen as a dance of creation, fertility, and transformation. At its core, the symbolism of the moon and the sun is a celebration of unity within duality. They remind us that light and shadow, masculine and feminine, creation and dissolution are not separate forces but parts of the same whole. The moon's changing face and the sun's steady light offer complementary lessons, the importance of growth and change, and the beauty of constancy and balance. In their interplay, we see the archetypal dance of opposites that defines existence. The moon teaches us to embrace cycles, to honor rhythms of life and the wisdom of transformation. The sun reminds us of the constancy within those cycles, the steady energy that sustains us through change. Together, they are more than symbols. They are guides illuminating the path of creation, growth, and the balance through the interplay of light and shadow. The moon's cycle from new moon to full moon and back to new is a reminder of the rhythms that govern not only the natural world but our lives as well. Its monthly progression through light and shadow reflects larger patterns of growth, culmination, and renewal that extend far beyond the 29.5-day lunation cycle. By looking at the moon's journey as both a short-term rhythm and a metaphor for larger life cycles, we can uncover deeper insights into the nature of time, change, and personal evolution. The monthly lunation cycle, the period from one new moon to the next, is a microcosm of life's broader rhythms. Each phase, from the quiet beginnings of the new moon to the radiance of the full moon and the reflective descent of the waning phases, mirrors the stages of creation, growth, release, and renewal that define the human experience. The new moon represents beginnings, the planting of seeds, and the setting of intentions. It's a time of potential when the possibilities for growth and creation are infinite but not yet visible. The waxing moon reflects growth and expansion as light gradually gathers and energy builds. This is a phase for action, for bringing ideas and intentions into the world. The full moon is the culmination of the cycle, a moment of illumination, clarity, and fulfillment. It's the peak of energy when these things come to fruition and insights are fully revealed. The waning moon represents release, reflection, and preparation for the next cycle. As the light diminishes, we are invited to let go of what no longer serves, making space for new beginnings. These monthly cycles provide a rhythm that can guide our personal and collective activities. By aligning with the moon's phases, we can create a sense of flow in our lives, working with the natural energies of growth and rest rather than against it. The lunation cycle becomes not just a celestial clock, but a map for living in harmony with the rhythms of the universe. Just as the moon's phases unfold over the course of a month, so too do our lives move through similar patterns on a larger scale. These metaphorical lunar phases can help us understand the broader arcs of our personal journeys, providing a framework for reflection on where we are and where we're headed. The earliest stages of life, infancy and early childhood, can be seen as the new moon phase. Like the new moon, it's a time of potential and beginnings. It's a period of pure possibility when the seeds of identity and purpose are planted but not yet fully visible. And then childhood and adolescence can be seen as the waxing phase. This is a time of growth and exploration when the light of understanding and self-awareness begins to gather like the waxing moon. This phase is marked by expansion, curiosity, and the formation of identity. Adulthood as the full moon phase. In adulthood, we reach the culmination of our efforts and intentions. This phase represents the height of productivity, fulfillment, and illumination, when our contributions to the world are most visible. Elderhood as the waning phase. This later stage of life, like the waning moon, are a time of reflection, wisdom, and release. It's a phase of letting go, of distilling the essence of what has been learned, and preparing for the eventual renewal that comes with the next cycle. This metaphorical framework helps us see our lives as part of a larger rhythm, one that mirrors the cycles of the moon. By embracing this perspective, we can find meaning in each stage, understanding that growth, fulfillment, and release are all essential parts of the journey. Astrology offers tools to deepen our understanding of these cycles, allowing us to apply the symbolism of the lunar phases to different scales of time, like secondary progressions, which use the motion of the moon to represent years of personal development. In secondary progressions, each day of the moon's movement after birth corresponds to 1 year of life. This method allows astrologers to map the unfolding of a person's life through the lens of the lunar cycle. For example, a progressed new moon marks a major new beginning of life, a time to set intentions and embrace fresh opportunities. A progressed first quarter moon represents a period of challenge and growth when we must push through obstacles to continue expanding. A progressed full moon signals a time of culmination and fulfillment when the efforts of previous years come to fruition. A progressed last quarter moon invites reflection and refinement, a period of release and preparation for the next chapter. This technique highlights the way lunar symbolism can be scaled to fit not only monthly and yearly cycles, but entire lifetimes. It reinforces the idea that our lives are not linear, but cyclical, shaped by repeating patterns of growth, culmination, and renewal. The wisdom of cycles, whether we're observing the moon's phases over the course of a month, reflecting on the broader arcs of our lives, or exploring astrological techniques like secondary progressions, one thing becomes clear. The rhythms of the moon are the rhythms of life. They remind us that growth is not a straight line, but a spiral, one that brings us back to similar themes and lessons at different stages of our journey. By connecting with these cycles, we can find a sense of harmony and perspective. We learn to honor the phases of growth and rest, to embrace both beginnings and endings, and to trust in the constant motion of the universe. The moon, in all its phases, becomes a guide, not just in the sky, but in the rhythms of our own lives. It teaches us that every phase, no matter how bright or shadowed, holds its own beauty and wisdom, forming part of a greater, ever-turning whole. When the moon waxes and wanes, it's as though it's telling the story of our own growth, step by step, phase by phase. The new moon whispers a potential, a seed buried in the darkness waiting to take root. It's the moment to dream, to imagine what might come next. Then, as the moon gathers light, we feel the pull to take action, to build, to grow into those intentions. Each phase of the moon is a moment of alignment, a call to step into its rhythm. The waxing crescent carries the energy of hope, while the first quarter pushes us to confront obstacles and refine our efforts. The waxing gibbous phase is a time of anticipation, the space where preparation meets readiness, and then the full moon arrives, its light flooding the night with like a revelation. It's the pinnacle of the cycle, where the place where intentions become visible, where clarity shines through. But the story doesn't end there. The moon begins to wane, and we are invited to let go. The waning gibbous is for sharing what we've learned, reflecting on what has unfolded. The last quarter brings its own kind of wisdom, a moment to release what no longer serves and make space for what is to come. And finally, the waning crescent, that delicate sliver of light before the new moon, reminds us to pause, to rest, to honor the endings that pave the way for beginnings. This rhythm isn't just out there in the sky. It's inside us. The moon's phases resonate with their own cycles of growth, fulfillment, and release. By following its lead, we can align our actions with its energy, working in harmony with the cosmos. Across cultures and traditions, the moon has been revered as a guide to life's rhythms. Its phases have shaped rituals, informed calendars, and inspired myths. The moon isn't just a celestial body, it's a symbol, a teacher, a reminder of the cycles that govern everything from the tides to the turning of the seasons. In Hindu astrology, the moon is known as Chandra, the nurturer, the mind, the heart. Its phases are mapped through the nakshastras, 27 lunar mansions that divide the sky into segments, each carrying a unique energy. The moon's journey through these mansions is a celestial rhythm that influences our emotions, our intuition, our very sense of self. Among indigenous cultures, the moon has long been a marker of time and a guide for living in harmony with nature. The waxing moon signals a time to plant, to build, to create. The waning moon calls for rest, reflection, and renewal. Full moons often mark moments of community, a time to gather, to celebrate, to honor the light. Even in Western traditions, the moon holds deep archetypal power. It's the goddess Diana, the maiden mother and crone of the triple goddess archetype. Its phases are woven into myths of transformation and creation, reminding us that life is a cycle, not a straight line. Each of these perspectives adds a layer of meaning to the moon's rhythm, connecting it not just to the individual, but to the collective, to the stories and wisdom that have shaped humanity's relationship with the cosmos. The moon is a tether, a bridge that connects the celestial and the earthly. It influences the tides, the rhythms of plants and animals, even the flow of our emotions. In astrology, it's a symbol of the subconscious, the intuitive, the internal world. Its cycles remind us that life is not just about action, but reflection, not just growth, but release. Astrologically, the moon shows us where we seek comfort, how we process emotions, and how we connect to the rhythms of our lives. Its placement in a natal chart speaks to our inner world, our instincts, our habits, our sense of belonging. And as the moon moves through the sky, its transits activate different areas of our charts, creating subtle shifts in energy that shape our days. But the moon is more than a personal symbol. It is a cosmic rhythm keeper. Its cycles align with the cycles of nature, the flow of the seasons, the turning of the tides. It reminds us that we are not separate from the world around us, but deeply connected to its patterns. The moon teaches us to honor those patterns, to work with them rather than against them, to find meaning in their flow. The moon, with its ever-changing face, offers a lesson that growth is not linear but cyclical. It teaches us to honor each phase of the journey, from the first spark of inspiration to the quiet release of completion. It reminds us that light and shadow are not opposites but partners, each necessary for the cycle to continue. By connecting with the moon's rhythm, whether through its phases, its placement in our charts, or the wisdom of cultural traditions, we can deepen our understanding of ourselves and our place in the cosmos. The moon becomes a guide, a mirror, a reminder that we too are part of the great cycles that shape the universe. So the next time you find yourself under the moon's glow, or even in its absence, take a moment to feel its pull. Let it remind you of the cycles within cycles, the rhythms that move through all things. The moon isn't just up there in the sky, it's in us too. It's a part of the way we grow, the way we release, the way we find balance in the dance of light and shadow. I hope you've enjoyed this episode in our series on the lunation. This was about the waxing and waning cycles of the moon, waxing and waning phases of the moon. And so until next time, keep your eye on the sky and make a wish upon a star.